Morning, everyone. And yes, Sally, what wonderful. I've read, I think, every tip Sally has given and appreciate everything from Playbook and the ads in the paper to remind us to promote business and just reinforce that positivity. So thank you so much. And thanks, Kelly in South Tampa Chamber. So as some of you know, I like to share with you the screen, and I will, and I encourage each of you to do those things when you're presenting. And so 5 considerations for customer service is certainly the focus of what we have for the second part of this. Following Sally's, I mean, some of the things I really heard from her: strategy, communication, be helpful, create a community, have loyalty, and all of those are wonderful. So to complement it and not repeat it, some of you have heard me say this before, that when you have change, it can feel uncomfortable, but it's a chance to do something really well. And some of you have heard me say in the past, and even as recently as yesterday, I don't believe people dislike change as much as I believe people dislike how it's communicated or not communicated. So Sally's message about getting out in front of it and making sure that during this change, we are being very proactive is really important. So when we think of this change, think of how are we providing service? So again, to complement these, think about this portion is to assist you at this time of moving forward, because a lot of you know, I encourage you not to say back. I mean, we're not going back to normal. We may be back to the office, but it's not ever going to be the same, and that's okay. It's about moving forward, and we want to consider our mindset and our approach to service. So feel free to put those comments in the chat. As we look ahead, I'll simply cover 2 things: define service to ensure that we're talking about something similar, and 5 approaches to what I call serve. And I've tweaked it for this, and if you don't like the acrostics that spell something, it's still 5 things that'll just come from that SERVE. So defining service, there are a lot of ways to look at it, but it's that everybody is a part of service. And Sally mentioned that your team members can be your biggest advocates or your worst challenges. And so think about service not just as you in your role, but how does your brand serve you? How does each customer, each client, each donor, each member, how do they serve others, and what are they saying about you? So what service is and is not. So what service is, that sounds funny, right? Is meeting people. And what I mean by that is meeting people where they are. So when we think about service and serving them, we want to meet them where they are. Sally mentioned that her coined phrase, Corona Coaster, someone may be in a very down place and you want to meet them there, and you might feel like that is not where you want to meet them, but I'll get to some of that in a minute too. But service is not badgering people. So while in that extreme, like Sally mentioned, of you don't want to all of a sudden pop up after 3 years, you also don't want to just constantly be hitting them with information. You want to communicate well, but you want to meet them where they are as far as in your sales cycle or your customer lifetime. Service is sharing, service is not telling. And there's a difference. I know we use the expression tell your story, but it's really about sharing. And I thought of Steve Riddle last night, and I thought, I wonder if that's Steve's question when we were in the leadership course, where the question was, how do you market when your customers are donors? And I thought of the American Lung Association, of like telling that story is one thing, but it's really sharing how you're impacting. So you serve others when you share how they contribute. And there was an example, whether you were in the class or not, this example remains true, is that if people feel good about your brand and your message, they feel good about supporting. And then when you're servicing them, they feel connected to it. Service is listening. Service is not just talking. So Sally and I are going to listen. Kelly's listening. We'll answer questions. And you want to listen to really understand and participate, as opposed to listen to shut people down or tell them, oh no, that's not what we're doing. People are under a different amount of pressure right now, and they may not interpret things the way you wanted them to. Telling them that they don't get it that's not going to serve you well at all. Service is about fit. And I mention this because while Sally was talking about the strategy and the communication, you notice she didn't say blanket everybody, because not everyone's a fit for your business. And while creativity comes out of circumstance and innovation is that product of it, we don't want to look desperate in trying to serve everybody. Then we lose our strengths and our core values. And it's not about just making it fit. We don't want to cram something in. My joke is often, nobody asked me to speak on financial plans, right? I can understand them, but that's not my expertise. So we want to make sure that we're serving in a manner that is true to what you've already established. Service is collaboration. It's not compromise. I talk about this a lot in negotiations, that we don't have to compromise what we're providing simply to get the business or serve a customer or client. And you don't want to tell them you're going to compromise. You can say, out of respect for what we're going through, in an effort to collaborate, this is an exception. You don't have to tone down your value in that way. And that brings me to services making an offer, and it's not discounting. And a lot of you have read or heard or seen a video that I've shared. I do make offers. It's just, you don't say, here's a big discount. You may say, because of the situation, or because you're going through this, or in order to celebrate your grand reopening, here's a special offer. And I loved that that came up. If you were on that last night too, it just made me smile to think that we want to offer something out of service. So those are some things service is not. In ways to get to service, your website, email. Sally talked about a few of these. Making phone calls, reaching out, so that it's not a surprise when you start to make your move forward, or you're already in that. Social media, you heard great ideas from Sally. That's certainly a big part of her expertise, to post different things, to be live. The Chamber's done a wonderful job with all of these. Hopefully you've all heard from one of us on the board and the team by now, because we want you to know that we're thinking about you. Hosting events, and now I add in person. And throughout the past weeks, I hadn't put that, but now you're moving to that. And that brings me to another part of how do we serve when we're in person now? It's a little bit different. So think of service as the act of providing something for someone else where you both feel there's value. And it might seem really clear and very elementary. The reason I put it here on a slide is because some of us have not had a lot of business in the past few weeks. And as we come out of this, we still want to know that we both want to feel there's value there. You don't want to feel like you have to give everything away in order to, quote unquote, get your business back, because we will go to that loyalty Sally mentioned and respect what you're providing. So I encourage you to think about it that way. I'm going to stop the share right now and see everybody doing all right. Is there anything that anybody wants to address at this point? Because we'll go to the second part if not. Looks like everybody's feeling okay. All right, great. Well, I'll come back in a minute. We'll come back to the share. So let's look at this as the 5 approaches to serve. And you may have seen the video. I typically do a video each workday. And this is tweaked slightly because, as Sally mentioned, things are fluid. So I've changed it a little bit because now it's a little bit later. So 5 approaches to serve. I encourage you to think about these 5 things with that acrostic, SERVE. S, stay connected. This is not a time to go dark. This is also not a time to all of a sudden appear. If you haven't been doing that, then think about, how do you make that reach? Can you create a group now, like was mentioned earlier? Can you ask for some ambassadors to do some activities and to do some promotion? But stay connected. Even if you start to feel like, I saw somebody share a post like, oh, I'm too busy to do this at this point. I hope I can do it later. It's like, that just made the person sound like they weren't in control. So ensure that you're staying connected, and in that connection, it's about moving forward. The E, empathize with clients and customers. And I'm huge on exercising your emotional intelligence, and in particular, empathy. Sally said it beautifully, we're all going through this at a different way in a different place. And so empathy doesn't mean that you sympathize. It doesn't mean, oh, I feel so bad, I don't want to call them, or I don't want to reach out. Empathy means you're considering where they're coming from, which means you can tailor that communication sincerely to look at how will that serve them. Our respect challenges and opportunities. Respect is huge in that you want to, it's okay to somebody to, if they say something to you and it really isn't great news, to say that stinks. You don't have to solve everything for everyone, but you can respect that they're going through a challenge, and you may want to say, oh, respecting that or considering that, would you rather we talk later this week or next week? Because you don't want to just feel like you can't move forward in serving them, but you want to ask them and get their permission and get their buy-in so that they know that you are respecting them. Now, when you have an opportunity, jump on it. Thank them, be grateful, and really appreciate it. And it's wonderful to give people credit if they've been supportive throughout with that loyalty. The V is vary your approach for each customer and each client or donor or member. And I don't mean you have to be a Jekyll and Hyde and change yourself. No, you're going to be true to your brand, true to your plan that Sally mentioned. You're going to communicate effectively, but you want to vary the approach. You may have segmented a client base. You may have a group that participates occasionally, a group that participates regularly, and then your super fans or super clients or customers. So you might want to have different approaches and different offers for them. So it's not a one size fits all when you serve people. The best thing you can do is ask and encourage them. Like a lot of you know, at the chamber, we have 110%, we have chairman's circle, we have different levels of membership. And what's great about that is that approach works for each of you in different ways. And then the other E is engage in a personal service contract. And if you saw the video today or you want to see it, in my Lemberg Isms and my tips, what I mean by this is, I'm going to bring it up in a second, is ensure that you're not just thinking about how you want to engage with people. I always find it interesting, like the golden rule, treat others how you want to be treated. I would like to use the platinum or titanium or whatever you want to call it, is treat people how they want to be treated. So if you engage in what I call a personal service contract or personal service engagement, it means you're really mindful of others. So in that, this is my Lemberg Ism of today, is think about how you are talking to people. Right now, some people aren't comfortable going out, or some people aren't comfortable with the exchange. So think about smiling, even if you're wearing a mask. I mean, a smile says so much about your approachability. And if we make a misstep and we're smiling and we're being sincere, people are likely more forgiving. But we want to decrease discomfort. So you want to make eye contact. We might feel uncomfortable if we have a mask or other people have masks on, but if we make eye contact, then people know that we're human to human, because we've been doing a lot of this at a distance. And when you get a chance to be connected, it's important. Speak slightly louder if you're wearing a mask. And believe it or not, even if someone else is wearing a mask, you may want to speak a little louder. I know they're not covering their ears, but it's a distraction. It's a bit of a barrier even in our normal, I shouldn't say normal, our typical interaction. So we'll see what becomes the more normal, right? Ask permission if you're moving towards someone. And again, you might think, oh, this is a lot. But if you say, is this comfortable where I am? Because sometimes people get really close. I mentioned it in the video. I mean, running this morning, some guy came up and he almost touched me running past, didn't even say anything. And so it's just, I wouldn't like that pre-COVID-19 either. Confirm the distance is acceptable, be open. Someone may ask you to move back and you don't want to be defensive, because it's just an unusual time. And last, I mentioned it already, exercise your empathy muscles. We all have them, we just don't always use them. Consider others, be less self-focused, because in serving others, that's a great way to allow them to know that we care. So with that, let's see, as we look back, we define service, 5 approaches to serve. Hopefully we hit that goal to assist you in the time of moving forward for your mindset, because a lot of it is, how do I serve and feel good about it? as you take this approach forward. So let us know what can be addressed and what you'll do differently. I'll unshare the screen now so that Sally and I can answer questions.